Welcome to the Iferia TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today we are joined by Rick Tumlinson, a man known as the Godfather of Commercial Space and one of the founders of the new space revolution. For over 35 years, he's been at the center of the movement that turned space from a government-only program into a frontier for entrepreneurs and citizens, helping sign the first private astronaut to the ISS, co-founding the XPRIZE, and testifying before Congress 6 times. Now, through his new book, Why Space? The Purpose of People, he's asking a bigger question, not just how we get to space, but why we go and what it says about who we are. So, Rick, I am super excited and honored to welcome you to the show, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
So let's get things started, Rick. You've been called the Godfather of Commercial Space and have been at the center of this movement for over 35 years. So when you look back at the young man, who first started pushing this vision, what was the core belief that made you so certain that this industry would happen, even when everyone said you were crazy initially?
Yeah, I grew up like a lot of kids, reading a lot of science fiction and watching science fiction. And
Mhm.
while I was doing that, there was the Apollo program, the Space Shuttle program, all of that happening on TV. And in the mind of a kid, those two things go together. It was like, well, hold it. We're flying people in space. We're going to the moon and we're flying the space shuttle around and all these things. And then there's Star Trek, right? And science fiction and all of that.
Mhm.
Well, of course, this is going to lead to that, right? It's going to happen. And what happened was, as we hit a certain period of time, we began to realize that the government really wasn't going that way, and that it really had no intention of opening space to the people. It was just a government program. Basically, it was left over after they did the moon race. And you had all these hungry companies that are like, give me money, and all of this. And we ended up with the space shuttle, which just flew in circles. When the shuttle first came out, right before it came out, we were told that it was going to be, I'm going to get this number wrong, but about $50 a kilo, right? And, or let me see, $25 a kilo to fly a person into space. And then it was going to fly 50 times a year. And it was just going to be like, we're going to have this railroad, this train system into space, and everything was going to happen. We got all excited, and it turned out that was just a lie. The space shuttle only flew like 5 times in 1 year, and the price was $5,000 a kilo, and it stayed there forever. And so what happened was we started looking around, like, the way you do this in the real world is that the government doesn't drive trucks and build trucks, and it doesn't build buildings. The private sector does that. And so we were thinking, well, okay, thank you, NASA. You've done a great job. Now let's let the people take over. And it took a long time. I testified in 1995, and I called for all transportation to the space station to be commercial. And I called for all follow-ons after the space station to be commercial. And it took, 17 or 18 years of fighting to get that first SpaceX vehicle to fly to the space station. And now we're going to have new commercial space stations following it. So, and by the way, it wasn't just me. There was a whole bunch of us. There was a group of us. I just happened to be sort of the loud one.
All right, Rick, that was quite an interesting backstory, and thank you very much for sharing it with us. So you've had wins that changed history, like signing the first private astronaut to the ISS, and you've had failures that you describe as spectacular and early. So what did one of those early failures teach you about risk and vision that success really could not have done?
It's really, I've had a lot of lucky experiences, and I've been around some great mentors that helped me understand. And one of the great things was that running into somebody who's just been in the field a long time, they know their way around, and they actually are willing to work with you and listen to you and help you feel your way along. I mean, that's been huge for me. The experiences that I've had of failing a lot. I've had a lot of failures, and I was with a company in the 90s. We were going to build a little rocket. It failed. I was with another company in the 90s. We were going to do a private moon landing. We failed, along with my friend Peter Diamandis. His company failed. He's the XPRIZE guy. I had a spacesuit company that failed. I did an asteroid mining company that failed. And I'm saying that because I want your listeners to understand that failure in a project is not failure of your life if you learn from it and you get back up and you go to the next thing. And eventually, yes, I got to sign Dennis Tito, but that was part of the project where we were trying to create the Russian space station as a private space station, and we lost it at the end. And we had to move him over to the International Space Station because we lost the Mir, the Russian space station. But eventually, I've had some great successes as well. And, my space fund company, venture capital company, that's turned out to be very good. So, all of these things help inform you, and all of these things help you grow, and you just have to keep going.
All right. So, Rick, fast forward to today. You are an author. So, let's talk about your book, Why Space. So, tell us about it. Just give us an overview of this book. Tell us your motivation, or the spark you had that made you write this book, and who the ideal readers are.
Well, having been in the field for a very long time and having spent a lot of that time trying to convince people in the government, investors, the private sector, and just voters and regular people why space was important. I was doing the thing that, a lot of people do. We're like, well, we can get energy in space. We can protect the Earth. If you're talking to military people, it's strategic. It's very important, strategic. People can fly in space and experience what my friend Frank White calls the overview effect by looking at the Earth. And I'm thinking of all of these different reasons as to why space, telecommunications, on and on and on, all these reasons. Underneath, there are bigger reasons. And I had to go through some processes. I talk about it in the book. The day that we buried my mother, I went outside and I looked at the stars. And I really felt something tugging at my soul. And it was sort of like, come, join us, come out here. This is all waiting for you. And I really let myself sort of swim in that and really connect with that. And I started realizing, yes, I've been trying to sell it for all these other reasons. But the big reason is that I believe that's what we're here to do. That is what human beings exist to do. And I broke that into 3 different principles.
Your book is called Why Space, The Purpose of People. That's a profound reframe indeed. So, for someone in our audience who thinks space is about rockets, astronauts, and billionaires, so how do you explain that it's actually about something much bigger and much human?
The goal of opening space is to expand. I'll give you the 3 principles. The 3 principles are, the first one is to protect and expand the domain of life. And what I mean by that is I love the mother world, and I call Earth the mother world. She's our mother, and we have to take care of her. And at the same time, and there's a lot of things we can do using space to do that. We can harvest resources in space, and so that we're not having to dig mines into the Earth. We can do it out there where it's dead. The other aspect is that the idea of expanding life. I believe part of our goal, our role, I want to see trees on Mars. I want to see butterflies on the moon. I want to see the expansion of life to these dead rocks that are out there. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to honor and evolve human civilization. Honor means that we look at all of the history of humanity from all the different angles, and we learn from that. right? That's one reason I don't use the word colonization anymore, because that has sounds bad to people. But what we're talking about this time is that we're all going to go together and we're not going to take it away from anybody because there's nobody there. So this is the first frontier in human history
Mm.
where humanity can go together. And then when we're out there, I said honor and evolve, we can become better at being people with each other. There's one place in the solar system where Russians and Americans get along and love each other, and it's the space station. It's right up there right now. And so let's learn these lessons and then let's go out there. It also involves the evolution of what we become. Are we going to join with AI? Are we going to move into different species? What are we going to become as we go out? And then the third one is the fun one, and that is to explore and experience everything in the universe. And I believe that that's like us getting off the couch and putting down the game controller and the remote control and going outside. We have to get out. We have to become what we can possibly become by going out from where we are.
All right. So, Rick, you argue that this century is the most important in human history. So why exactly would you say that?
I talk about this 100 years that we're in, and it's just coming to an end. If you go back into the early 20th century, basically empires or whatever had kind of covered the world. We had, let's say, the 90s, right in that realm. If you go like 10 years on the other side of it, you'd had the First World War. You had the first radio and television networks popping up, the airplane. We had the first world plague and the Spanish flu. We had all of these things that had happened that for the first time, Earth was a world and people were interacting together in terms of being a globe. Now you cut to now, we're at that point where we're at a moment where the things that we do and we have been doing for those last 100 years are starting to add up, and we can destroy the world. We can
Mm.
destroy it through nuclear problem, climate change, disease, all of these different things. And so here we are in this window. But what's interesting is the technologies that we've spent the last 100 years developing are the same ones that you could press a button and send a missile in a rocket and blow somebody up, or you can press a button and that rocket can carry humanity into space. And so
Mm.
it's just this amazing coincidence of time. And if we don't do it, I believe that we're going to go downhill, that we have to take this moment and leap forward and leap up.
So, for someone listening right now, who feels overwhelmed by the news, AI, climate, division, uncertainty, and even the war going on. So, what gives you the genuine, grounded hope to keep pushing forward?
Yeah. We have always done this with each other. I mean, a lot of these fights, by the way, are over resources. If there wasn't so much oil in the Middle East, nobody'd be paying attention. There wouldn't be a war over there, right? That's what they're fighting about, really, underneath. That's why it's so important to some people, is because they want the energy. Well, we have unlimited energy in space. So we would take that reason away because the sun shines 24/7, 365 in space.
Mm.
There are other things we can do out there. Then we get into like precious metals, people fighting over that. There's a lot of the wars that are going on, let's say in Africa, are about the fact that certain countries are sitting on mines that have lots of precious metals, those kind of things, and groups support other groups to take over that so that certain people can control it. So all of these things go back to sort of primitive ways of being with each other. And what I'm hoping, I can't prove this, by the way, but I want it to be so. And I believe that every time we've gone into a new frontier, it gives us an opportunity to try to be different. As we open space, this is the first frontier where we can actually, I don't want us to pause, but I want us to think and go, okay, how are we going to do this one? And that's why I wrote my book. Here's my suggestions of the way that we should work together as we open the frontier of space. Because in the past, it's been like, oh, hell, man, there's some land over there. Let's go grab it. Oh, there's people living there. Oh, screw them, man. We're just going to take it, and we don't have to do that this time. We can stop and go, okay, let's do it right. Let's work together, and let's leave maybe some of the worst instincts of humanity behind if we can. But there's only one moment in history where you get the chance to have that conversation, and that's right now.
Okay, that was a really insightful response, Rick. So, for the engineers, the students, and dreamers in our audience who feel like they can't compete with billionaires and giant corporations, so how can an ordinary person meaningfully participate in shaping the future of space and humanity?
Thank you for the question, Ezekiel. These are great questions, by the way. I appreciate them. In the book, and I didn't do this originally. I went right to the principles, and I talked to a friend of mine who read it, and he has this funny accent. He's like, "Well, Rick, you need to tell your story so everybody will understand it's like their story. And so I went back and I rewrote it, and I put some of my story in it. I am not a billionaire. My dad had 3 jobs. I'm working class. I had drug problems. I had alcohol problems at different points in my life. 16 years sober now, but I mean, I had really I was homeless at one point. But what I did was I gave myself what I call permission to dream. And this is important for your listeners. Permission to dream is something you give yourself, and nobody can take that permission away once you give it to yourself. So you set a dream. You say, I'm going to do this with my life. I'm going to go here. I'm going to make this thing my purpose. And then I'm going to push for it, and nothing's going to stop me. And everybody has access to dreams. Dreams are not a commodity or a resource that you can only get in the Middle East or that only billionaires have or anything. A dream can be in the heart of any child, any adult, anywhere. And then you add purpose to that. My purpose is to achieve that thing. And then you go out and do it. So in the book, I'm trying to show that just a kid like me who just kept going and didn't give up can find themselves in a world where, yeah, I know Elon, I know Jeff, I know these people, right? I'm not a billionaire, but I've been able to influence the world a little bit by taking that stand and never giving up. And that's the key. It's not about billionaires. I want to be really clear about something here.
Hmm.
These guys are not going into space, especially Jeff and Elon. Whatever you think of them, and believe me, I disagree with a lot of stuff that Elon's doing. A lot. I'm basically on the other end politically. But what he's doing and what Jeff is doing, they're not going out there to make money. They made their money for their whole career to spend to open space for humanity.
Mm.
Now, they're business guys, and of course, so they're going to do businessy type stuff. But I know people who are even big critics of theirs who admit that that's the truth. Elon is doing what he's doing because he believes in humanity and he wants to expand humanity. Jeff is doing what he's doing. By the way, they're completely different people. They couldn't be more different. He's doing it because he believes in humanity. And they're not the only ones. There's a whole bunch of us who are not billionaires. I mean, my fund, I work with small startup companies and try and get them going and help them get a little money in the door so they can get going. And these are all regular people, regular engineers who've just said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. So that's how it all happens, right? You just go for it and you don't give up.
Uh, as a really great piece of advice, Rick. So, you have been sober for a number of years and have spoken about personal struggles alongside your professional journey. So, did facing those inner battles change how you show up as a leader and a visionary today?
Well, I don't know how visionary I am, but I am very lucky that I was able to make it through all of those challenges. A lot of that had to do with the love of other people and people who were there for me when I was having rough times. And so what I try to do now is pass that along. Or Robert Heinlein, the big science fiction author, created a term many years ago. He said, pay it forward. And so whatever I can do to pay the blessings that I've had forward to other people, I try to do that. And to me, that in a way, that's what the book is about too. It really is a matter of saying, here's what I've learned, here's what I know, here's some feelings I have about what this is all about. Do you agree? Do you share it? And wouldn't it be cool? Look, think about it this way. Wouldn't it be cool if humanity, rather than basing your value on how many Teslas you have or how big your yacht is or how many likes you have, it was based on you being a human being and you taking care of the world and you exploring and experiencing and creating new things. And by the way, that includes art. This isn't all just about engineering and science. You know, I have a friend who's working on a new ballet that could be done in 0G. Just imagine that spinning around in 3D and all of that. Yeah, it's beautiful, right? And all of these things are coming. It's all just anybody who's listening to this right now has a chance of participating in the opening of the grandest frontier in all of history. It's coming right now, and you're going to be able to access it because one of the big things, and this is a little bit technical, but it's hugely important. The thing that Jeff and Elon and all these other companies are doing, Rocket Lab, Firefly, which are not billionaire companies, is they're creating reusable rocket ships. And this is critical. I call them ships because you don't throw ships away. And this changes everything. Up until now, the rockets and the launchers that have been used, the Apollo, the Shuttle, everything, you basically threw almost everything away and you had to start over and they're really expensive. That's why you and I aren't having this conversation on the moon right now. But if you're building rocket ships, it's like trucks and cars and airplanes and railroads. You use them over and over. Well, now the cost comes way down. And that's why within the next 5 to 10 years, people listening, let's say 10 years, people listening to this are going to be able to buy a ticket, go into space, and they're not going to have to be a billionaire. They're not even maybe even going to have to be a millionaire. Just regular folks, save up some money. I would start saving money now, by the way. Put it into some good high interest type stuff, and be ready to go because it's coming in your lifetime.
Okay, that is really fascinating to think about, Rick. So, if you could, look back on your career or, go back and give yourself one piece of advice, your younger self, that's standing at the beginning of that's 35-year journey, what would it be?
Wow. That's a great question. Probably, and this is very practical. For me personally, it would have been don't drink and don't do drugs. That would have probably saved me a lot of time and I would have gotten here sooner. But, when we judge our lives from the future or from where we are now, that's already happened. I can't change it. It's just a memory. And maybe those things help put me in the right place for the right things to happen. The biggest advice I would give myself, though, on a personal level that doesn't involve drugs and alcohol would be to believe in myself. It took me a long time to believe in myself. And that's one reason I talk about that permission to dream. It took me a long time to understand that I could do this and I didn't have to have the perfect background, that I could just do it. At the same time, give your love to people. Don't be greedy. Don't try and own everything and, oh, this is all mine and you can't have it. It's like if when I run into two people that I need to have talk to each other, I introduce them and I get out of the way and I let them talk. Little things like that, right? Be nice to people, be kind, love thy neighbor, as a certain carpenter once said a long time ago. Just love thy neighbor, give it away, care about people, show compassion, treat nature nicely. All of that, do it. And you'll find that your world shifts and you're starting to come from a different place that is more beautiful and more positive.
Okay, that is indeed a valuable piece of advice. Someone just starting out a career would who really wants to hit to. And thank you very much for also sharing it with us, Rick. So, part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovation. And for that reason, we like to cycle around the topic of innovation for a while before we wrap the conversation up. For you personally, after a lifetime of pushing humanity to look outward and upward, what does the word innovation truly mean to you now, and how does it relate to what you do?
I think innovation comes from knowledge. You don't innovate if you don't know anything, right? You have to understand what's out there in the world. If you're running around thinking that you've created all these new ideas, but you haven't done your research, you haven't looked at history, you don't know what's going on in the field. And I see that a lot nowadays. I see this a lot where you'll see people online or on this thing here, and they're living in their mom's basement and they don't know anything about anything, but they're putting out opinions, maybe about vaccinations or this or that or the other, as if they understood all of the science and all of the things underneath. And I think what happens is when you dive into a field and you do your research and you work with people who really know what they're doing and you allow your mind to be open, then you'll come up with a way of saying, hey, that thing that you're working on, maybe we should try it this way. Right. But first you have to have the knowledge. First you have to do maybe the boring stuff, maybe the, getting your hands dirty and getting out there, and say, and get into the world and put out a little sweat. And then you'll be in a place where you can say, there's an easier way of doing this, and let's try that. And I think that's critical. You can't innovate from ignorance, right? You have to innovate from knowledge. And I think that's really important.
All right, all right. That was a really interesting response indeed, Rick. Lastly, for our listeners, who are inspired by this vision and ready to think bigger about our future, where is the best place for them to go grab your book or maybe connect with you or follow you to see what you're doing or have a conversation with you?
The book itself is available on Amazon. It's Why Space, The Purpose of People. I think the audio book is like 99 cents right now, or something like that on Audible. And I would ask anybody who buys the book, please leave me a review. I like those little 5 little stars. Those actually help sell the book more than people realize. Yeah, I found out recently that, yeah, you don't want 3 stars and you don't want 4 stars. You got to get 5 stars because Amazon treats it in a weird way. But yeah, I would just go ahead and try and read the book. If you want to drop me a note, feel free. You can hit me on my website, rick@ricktumlinson.com. My nonprofit is the Earthlight Foundation. We have a great conference coming up in Houston in December of the fall. It's called the New World's Fair, and it's going to be great. So I'm out there in the world. You can find me, and anytime, happy to talk to anybody.
All right, Rick, thank you very much for sharing that with our listeners. It has been such an insightful and valuable conversation with you here today, and I am super excited having you as a guest on the show. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Ezekiel. I appreciate it. Thank you, man.